Hey everyone, welcome to Youth Bombs. I'm Craig,
I'm Holden.
I'm Olivia.
I'm David.
and we're the voice of young conservatives in Alachua County. Today we're taking a look at Kamala Harris's price gouging policy and what she intends to do there. Holden, why don't you start us off with an overview of what she's looking to do?
Well, Kamala Harris thinks that we need to rein in these companies because apparently they're price gouging and they're charging too much for their products. So she wants to pass legislation in Congress that is anti-price gouging. I couldn't find anything on her website that says I want corn to be charged X amount or whatever, but she thinks that these grocery stores are colluding to make prices higher. And my thing is if they're actually doing that, then why are their profit margins literally less than 2%? One. And two, there's no just thing as price gouging, okay, in involuntary exchange. If you exchange your money for a good or service, that means that the perceived value of the good or service is higher than the money that you're exchanging for it. And the seller values the money more than they do the good or service. So it's a win-win transaction. There's no just thing as price gouging in voluntary exchange. It's a figment of your imagination. She's living in a fantasy.
Yeah, and this is something I'd agree on. The price gouging, we shouldn't have a law against quote unquote gouging because look, that's actually going to increase supply in areas that need it most because people realize that there's a stronger incentive to bring goods there. So you'll naturally have an increase in supply. Whereas if you limit the price, then boom, there's less incentive to do that. So people aren't going to make the effort to go to a hurricane affected area, say, and bring gasoline or water or whatever other goods are needed. Olivia and David, do you agree, disagree? How do you feel about price gouging?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just another example of the government putting way too many regulations on the free market, and I'm sick and tired of seeing it. I mean, it's very against our Constitution. It's against, American culture, because when we think of American culture, we think of like freedom, individual choices, the free market. It's just another way for the government to just control people's, entrepreneurial spirit.
Absolutely. David?
Yeah, just let the American people decide what they want to buy. Let them decide what they think is valuable and let them pay for what they believe is valuable. But you see the government getting always in the way of the American people, not just through price gouging, but also through going ahead and through inflation and through those areas.
Yeah, the real people who are being gouged are the Americans who are paying the inflation tax. Right. And those are the real people that are being gouged. The government is gouging people through all the taxes that they have and through the fiat that they're creating. So if she really wants to rein in gouging, she should go ahead and close down the Federal Reserve and just stop the out-of-control government spending.
Exactly, yeah. You can visit the Committee for the Budget and Financial Services, and you can see our debt. I mean, our national debt is like in the trillions. And I don't think people really think about trillion. That's like 100,000 billion. You know what I mean? And then as we continuously take loans from countries that don't like us, like China and stuff like that, and, do business with them when we could be, solving our national debt. And I don't know why it's taken Congress and the national government so long to create a clear plan to solve our national debt.
They really, it seems that they don't want to because a lot of these programs are popular and anti-price quote unquote gouging is popular. You see these very emotional arguments like, no, you can't charge more than $4 per gallon of gas. And it's like, look, you're going to have a shortage if you don't do this, a worse shortage. So you need the price to increase for more goods to be delivered to that area. And you may run out anyway, but at least there will be a greater amount of goods in the affected area versus if you do an anti-gouging law where you won't have increased supply. It's just simple economics, and the price will eventually come down as the increased supply accounts for the increased demand.
The scary thing is I don't think that the average voter is really thinking about that. They're just thinking like in the short term. And the way that Kamala, and like especially in the presidential debate, she was able to articulate it just kind of sounded like, oh, it's like really good, like in the short term, like, oh, like the price is going to stay this way, for example, like of gas, like at $4, I'm just coming up with a random number, but they're not thinking about in the long term that creates a shortage, which then creates people getting laid off. I mean, that's simple economics, but people aren't thinking about that. They're not well versed in simple economics.
Yeah, and on top of that, you just think of the impact it has when we do have natural disasters, such as the hurricane which occurred. Like a lot of people were looking for gas in order to leave the area, but the prices are going to go higher because if the prices just stay the same, you're going to buy like 10 gallons of gas and you're going to take a lot of gas from other people who need it. So prices going higher allows more people to buy more gas so that they can go ahead and use it.
Absolutely. And looking at, say, industries like the grocery stores, they, as Holden mentioned, have a 1% profit margin. So they're not gouging people. It's already a low profit margin, and it could go down into a negative if you enact all these regulations on them that would hamper their ability to do business. And both the buyer and the seller see it as a convenient transaction that benefits them both. So, of course, they're going to go through with it.
Yeah, I mean, talking about, I think we understand. If you make the price too low for something, there's no incentive to produce the good or service because it doesn't make economic sense. The inputs are greater than the outputs, so it's just a failure to produce. So very quickly, you'll see the grocery store shelves just, it's going to be horrific, and there's going to be nothing there for whatever she actually wants to put a price control on. And so, but it's just, it's sad. Like, nobody really seems to care. So.
And also looking at the fact that she says that she wants to prevent mergers and acquisitions in the grocery store space, that just really shows, that along with her talking about price gouging, she has no concept of economics, combined with the want to, limit these mergers and acquisitions that, yeah, I think personally there's a place for antitrust on occasion, but here, no, definitely not. It's clear that there's lots of competition in the grocery market, the food market, and it would be an oligarchy or worse. It's not going to work for the people. It's not going to work out economically, and I think it would just really harm our national economy.
Which is really strange and ironic considering that they market themselves as like for the average American, yet economics is probably like the number one issue for the average American. I mean, most of our social issues and how we conduct our personal lives evolves around how well the economy's doing, our finances, our financial situations. So for them to for her cabinet or, potential cabinet administration to want to enact these economic policies that don't benefit the average American, it really makes you think, like, why? Do they actually believe that this will work? Because anyone who studies, like, basic economics knows that, like, that would produce a shortage. You know what I mean? So it's like, and the people in her administration, her cabinet, like they might have different views on how to approach, the best interest for the United States, but they're definitely not stupid. So it makes you think, like, why?
Yeah, because these policies are basically coded, right? They appear to be good if you haven't, say, done the research and looked at the background and all that. If you just look at them on their face, you might think, oh yeah, that sounds good, like we're gonna limit the price for this, okay, I don't have to pay too much, great. But then you look at, oh wait, there's lots of economic implications of this that are going to be harmful. So clearly not thinking through the policy or a lack of attention to detail. So you also have Governor Walz. He says that one man's socialism is another man's neighbor. So clearly they think that, like, you can just redistribute at will. They think that, it's just neighborliness, it's just being kind, when in actuality, it's much different than that. We're talking about your money, and you have the ability to voluntarily contribute whatever you like. But Holden, what would an ideal economic system look like in this sphere, and how would it differ from what we have now?
Well, that's a long question, but I'll give you a short the short answer is property rights. It's two words: property rights. If you try and centrally plan an economy, you're not going to have the right price. The prices are constantly changing based on supply and demand factors, wants, different tastes for consumers, and all that stuff. So the entrepreneurs have to make economic calculation accordingly. If you try and centrally plan the economy, you're going to have major imbalances in the economy because you don't have the right price mechanism to allocate the resources effectively. So the idea system is one that respects property rights. You don't have a Fed. You don't have the government trying to redistribute all this money. You don't have, you have none of that. No antitrust laws, none of these regulations, none of them. I mean, you just let the market work and do its thing. It's going to produce the best outcomes. It's going to produce the best and highest quality goods and services, the fastest increase in living standards. So you have the right prices in the economy and you have the right calculations in the economy. But it differs massively from what we have today. Today, we have really screwed up interest rates and monetary policy, and so the economic calculation is much more difficult for businesses, and it causes all sorts of problems. I could go into that very in depth, but I'm not going to do it now.
And in addition, also decentralizes the impact of a bad decision.
Right. So yeah, if one government bureaucrat is like setting the price of bread, and it's going to be wrong, the question is how wrong. That has a major effect. But if one entrepreneur does it wrong, he goes out of business. So it's not a big deal. Like that one entrepreneur fails because he makes he makes a bad calculation. That's fine. That's one entrepreneur that fails, and he suffers the consequences. The ones that do pretty well with economic calculation, they stay in and they get more money as a reward for allocating economic labor efficiently and capital efficiently. So it's just two words: property rights. That's what we need.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You really got to look at that and say, this makes sense economically, and that's how we can really run things in a more efficient manner. But David, want to get you with the closing thought. Any particular concerns about this, or are you on board?
Yeah, I'm on board, and I don't think people realize how radical Kamala is. Although she tries to paint herself as not radical, in 2020, I believe it was the New York Times that put her as the most left-wing senator in the Senate, even more left-wing than Bernie Sanders. She is not just a candidate. She is a very radical candidate with very radical ideals, which are much different than the past political candidates that we've had in recent American history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can just look at Venezuela and the shelves in their stores. We talk about price controls. Look, all of the shelves are barren. They're all barren. So that just proves the point in and of itself. That being said, thanks everyone so much for watching. We really appreciate it. We upload every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 1 p.m. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at youthbombs@alatrorepublicans.com. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks so much.
Take care.